Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Spiritually Engineered Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human experience from a spiritual perspective. Come on in, and I invite you to stay. When I was at camp in Iowa, one of the experiences that I want to talk about was when a couple of us campers wanted to do a cold plunge. And I think moving forward is something that we're going to have as part of the tradition to do because there's so much value there. I remember because I've done the ice plunge before last year. And actually I did a dedicated podcast episode talking about that. But I wanted to revisit that experience, or at least because of this time around, of something that came up that I think is worth talking about. For one thing, I remember it was like when we had it the first time, it was I heard it was one of those things that people wanted to have happen. And so I was like, all right, cool, sure. Let's do it. Like at least one of my friends was like telling me about it, that they were going to do to have it organized. And mind you, I've already did it once before last year, but there was part of me that was feeling a sense of dread and you could say a bit of anxiety, because stepping into that ice cold water, it's a very intense experience. If you haven't experienced it, I actually recommend it, provided that you have someone there with you to help you, to support, because this, like I said, I'm going to dive a little into it. But I was like finding myself feeling with dread, like, oh shoot, going to have to do this thing again. Even though I'm in the company of friends who respect what I choose, my own autonomy, and won't force me to do anything. But there was a part of me that felt, despite the fear and the dread I was thinking about, especially when I knew exactly when it was going to happen, the first time around this year, I had the intuitive pull to do it. So it's interesting how my feeling nature can, I feel guided to do something, but in my mind, my worries, anxiety, I get pulled in another direction. So it's like my two natures are actually not working in harmony. They're actually working against, they're going in different directions. And when it comes to moving and living in balance, it's about having feeling nature, my intellectual nature, all lined up, working together. So in that moment, or moments leading up until that, I was feeling a bit fragmented. And as a result, what happens there, I become out of touch with the present moment. Because now I'm stuck, in this case, in the future, ruminating about what the experience will be like. And mind you, when I do this, it tends to be an exaggeration. It's an exaggeration effect. So in a sense, if you find yourself, you're going to do something and you have some sense of dread, something I want you to think about, in my opinion, you're reliving that experience twice in your mind. And then of course the actual experience when it happens. Now, when I had the experience of actually doing the plunge, when I was actually there in the present moment, it wasn't as bad as my mind made it out to be. And ain't that a funny thing? Because I'm telling you, this is like part of my own experience and my own little thing that I can get into. Right? But so regardless, I had the fears, worries, but then intuitively it's like, no, I feel like I need to do this. There was this genuine need. And so right I was, my intuitive senses. And so I'm going to go ahead and do it. So then, when I knew at a certain point, like leading up to a couple hours before we were going to do it the first time around, I had set the goal for myself. You know what? Because I've been dreading so much about it, not only am I going to do it, right, making a decision, but I'm going to be the first person to do it. And usually the first person that goes experiences the water when it's the most coldest, because the more time it's spent, people going in and out, it starts to warm up a little bit. So I was like, you know what? Let me go in and be the first one there, and let me experience the coldest, at least that we can achieve with this big tub where everybody sits inside, and then I think we had like 10 packs of ice, big, huge bags of ice to see how, I don't, I think the temperature was like in the 40 degrees, maybe lower, probably in the high 30s. I can't recall, but that's what I remember hearing. But again, I could be wrong here. Nevertheless, regardless, the water was freezing. It's cold. So I did my thing, and then I started to, once everything was set up, and then all right, it's about that time to go. I step up to the plate, so to speak, and then I start to begin to go in there, slowly but surely. And usually, when it comes to like ice baths, it's important to go in there slowly and deliberate, not to go too fast or trying to dive in. Because what will happen there is that shocks the body, the nervous system. It can actually, in such a way where it can feel overwhelming, and even it's like a traumatic response to switching from like, okay, nice warm temperatures or like hot temperatures outside to something extremely cold. So you're jumping from extremes, and that can do a lot of harm. That's not usually good for the physical body. So it's going slow and intentional. So that I did, and I went to it. And then when I got, I remember when I stepped into it, and I was able, and I pretty much went down to like my neck. Like I was completely submerged up to my neck. And I had, obviously I was there with good company. And so at some point somebody started singing. And then I started joining. I mean, I was kind of going through that process of like the initial 30 seconds to like a minute where it can feel intense. Where the body's adjusting, so but once I reach that point, then it's like from the numbing of the cold water, then I start to feel less pain, and it's like, oh, okay, the body feels adjusted. And so, but the whole singing thing that we started doing, that was pretty cool because it helped me to take my mind off of the pain or discomfort and really shift into something different where I was present, but I'm intentionally directing my energy to like, the way I see it is like, I can be miserable, like, oh, I feel cold, like this feels awful. I can think about those things, or tuning into the people singing, and then I joined in, even in that water. That's a deliberate, conscious effort to say, you know what? Even in unpleasant experiences, I'm gonna have a good mood. I'm gonna be in a good mood about it. I'm gonna still enjoy it. Like that's a powerful thing, a quality to have, to enjoy things that don't feel pleasant. Imagine that. How can I, and I ask my helpers is, how can I enjoy my experiences, even the ones that I don't like, that I find unpleasant? How can I learn to enjoy it? And let me tell you, if you can do that, that is a powerful soft skill there, my friend. That is a very powerful skill that you can take anywhere in life. Enjoy the moment, even in the challenging times. Enjoying it is the last thing anybody's gonna think about. I'm gonna enjoy. No one thinks about that. They're just like, fuck, this is terrible. This is that, or all the things can get stimulated, But nevertheless, that's why that moment right there, which brings me back to like why the singing thing was such a potent thing, because that was my deliberate choice to say, you know what, I'm gonna enjoy being here, even though my body feels super mega ultra uncomfortable. I'm gonna sing. And I remember like kind of singing along, and I was like, shoot, I even sound pretty good. Like I don't sound too bad. Singing a couple notes and whatnot. I practice just like, it's very casual, but that was one of those things that helped me to work through it, and to be able and how enjoying it can serve as a buffer in those challenging experiences. And so then we were all just singing along, going through different songs that came to mind. And then I came out of it feeling so much better, energized, high energy, light, all these important things that's necessary to living life, to maintaining my energy, staying in my own center, moving in balance. These are the things that are essential, because it's in that way, in doing that I can enjoy and have the best life that I can, claim the best life, thriving and not suffering, or having to like go through stuff where it's like torture, because that's not a requirement to live purposefully. I can go through the growing pains, enjoy them, work with them, right, and still keep that high energy with all that, as well as, of course, those pleasant experiences. That's a no-brainer, right? It feels great. So that was the first time around. So once that passed and that was done, what was interesting, and this is kind of getting into my own stuff here. At some point, I decided, after the plunge, everybody did their thing, everybody went inside. I didn't at that time, the first time around, I didn't have a chance to plunge my whole head inside. A lot of other people did, and I didn't, and I was sort of regretting that. So I decided to just like plunge just my head, and I went to a certain extent in the water, and then I took it out, and then all of a sudden I was just like, I had some water in my head, and then I was kind of hearing some kind of weird little hollow sound, and I started to overthink that at a certain point. I started to get like really concerned, the worry about, oh shoot, what am I experiencing physically? Oh shoot, am I going to be okay? And then I started getting these thoughts. Like this is where the intellectual nature is taking things too far. When the mind is trying to take the drive or is trying to take control of everything, it's leaving my feeling nature out. And so I started getting to this insecurity because I'm trying to feel safe, and I'm obviously not. Filling into these stories like, oh shoot, what if this happens, this that happened. I started coming up with these stories that started just taking me away. It took me out of the present living experience. And that's the thing with this kind of stuff, when it's like moving, when we're out of balance, when I'm out of balance, what it does, the common ingredient is, when I hear from present, my mind is occupied with something. I'm everywhere else but here. So here's another thing. So after we did that experience, a couple of my friends were like, let's do it again. Let's do another go around. And so then we set it for like a couple of days afterwards, on the last day of a 7-day course that we were taking on the chakras. And when we had the first time around, it was like in the middle of the week into the whole course on the chakras. And so when that time around, when I knew that was going to happen, remember earlier I said that I was like feeling dread. I'm like, oh shoot, I'm going to have to do this thing again. But after I did it the first time around and I got in there, it's fine. And actually, when I knew we were going to do it again, there was still a bit of that hesitation, that sense of dread. But that time around, it didn't have a stronger pull on me anymore. At least going through that experience, my intellectual mind, my intellectual nature starts to just relax, chill. And so when I knew that was going to happen, rather than dreading the couple of days leading to the first time around and, taking myself out of the present moment, I was like, okay, cool, it's going to happen. I thought about it, and then it wasn't pulling on my energy, on my mind, and I was still present with where I was, and especially being more present with the course, with the chakra course, learning, doing techniques, and doing all those awesome things with my other campers, classmates. And now the second time around, we had a few people, but then one new person wanted to try it out, although she was very hesitant. And what the interesting thing about it was, here's where I got something very, to me, it gave me a good visual of what it's like. So I did the plunge the second time we had it around twice. I did it, so I went in second, and then I also went in, I think, second to last, I think. But and during those times, I had no issues actually going in there. It was like I said, it just kind of moving, deliberate movement, going step by step, allow my body to adjust, and then relaxing into it. But when one of my friends who it was her first time, she was having challenges. So when she started, she put her feet there first, but then she was just there, and she was just kind of in a lot of sense suffering. Like she was just with her feet in there. She felt cold. She felt like she was losing sense of feeling in there, but she hadn't put her whole body in. And so it was like that for a bit. and then she started worrying about her dog. Her dog was barking, but not. But the dog was actually her dog was right there, close by, and she was kind of barking and kind of reflecting some of her energy, and she was like kind of thinking about her dog, while trying to get her mind off the pain of stepping in the ice water. And then, as you know, I remember one of my other friend, my friend Tiger, was trying to support her to, like, okay, step inside, start to allow yourself to sink in. But she was having challenges, and so she was like looking to things to distract, when all she needed to do was to fully submerge. So she was able to get in there up to her waist at that point, but then it still felt like, oh shoot, this is tough, this is cold, ow, ow, and it's just like, it was such a slow process for her to submerge her body. And then she was able to, like, get it down to her belly. She went twice. So the first time she went down to her belly, but then she was like, and then she stayed for, like, I think all of us were challenged to go for like 3 minutes, to give you some perspectives. And she did it for the 3 minutes, but she didn't go up to her neck. And we were encouraging her to get to that point, submerge yourself up to your neck. And so, but she did, when she went her second time around, she was able to get to her shoulders, but it was like towards the end of the 3 minutes. She was like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and well, actually, the second time around, it wasn't for 3 minutes. It was cut for a much shorter time. So whatever remaining time she had left, it was like a portion of it where she was like, okay, because she was like going in so slow, and then when it got to like a few seconds left before, I guess, her timing was done, then she was able to dip in there for a couple seconds. I think maybe 10-15 seconds or so. But it was actually pretty quick. I would say even 10 seconds. But she didn't necessarily submerge her entire. She wasn't already to her neck, but she did most of it. She was able to get like 95%, like with the exception of her head, of course. But it was like that in and out type of thing. So observing all of this, and I was talking to my friend Tiger. It's interesting how the intellectual nature just like, the assignment is, okay, I'm gonna step inside this, right, move slow and deliberate. And she was taking a long time, and she was just like in her head about it, right? And what that was doing, that was actually creating a lot of suffering for her. Now, if she had gone in slow and deliberate, but just kept on going, instead of just, okay, go to her feet, wait for like seconds upon seconds, like it felt like a long time before moving forward, it just started creating a lot of friction, because it's like there's other parts of her body that's still warm, other parts of her body is cold. So that's where what I've learned from that experience is that I will create a lot of suffering for myself if I'm not fully committed. If I'm just half there, I'm actually going to I'm going to make things difficult for myself. I have to be all in the experience. I have to allow myself to move through it. Because remember, the only way we can grow in our spiritual evolutions, we have to be all there in. That's what involvement, we all need that as a soul. We need to be fully involved. If we're not, we're leaving ourselves and our needs out. And we're really just like a low blow to ourselves to not take all that life's there available for us. So have to be all in, have to be present, even when it's like, as I mentioned earlier, even through the unpleasant experiences, to be there, to show up, not avoid it, not escape it. Or just with the mental chatter. So eventually she was able to get down to her shoulders, and she just even what she accomplished was a big thing for her. And we all we all clapped for her, we all cheered her on. Because the important thing is, like, for anybody to step inside it, it matters. Whether it's just dipping your feet in, or if you just go all in to neck level. All that's why I'm with good people, because they celebrate where people are going through their own little growth process, and whatever opportunities that we have on the camp. Everything that happens there, the opportunities, the activities, there's a spiritual component to it all. Because it's about taking all those things back home that could be applied to any situation. This is why my spiritual path, a huge component of it, is about practicality. If I can't make it practical, it's not spiritual. And this is what separates, in my opinion, us from many other, I'm sure other people are doing works, but what separates us from many is because we're actually working with energy, working with our intuition, all these things, and working with the material world, working with these things that are just a means for our spiritual evolution. Not trying to forego anything for the name of ascension or anything like that. It's about living in two worlds at once, the material and the spiritual world. Working in both. Living in it, as opposed to just thinking about living in two worlds at once. To actually live in two worlds at once is simple. It's not complicated. But the intellectual nature, especially I know how mine is, and how I can just start jumping in my head. So to kind of put a bow on that, the important thing is, like, no matter what, whatever you've got going on, don't get stuck in your mind. Don't get stuck in thinking a whole lot. Because when I do that, I miss out on experiences that could be really fulfilling and nourishing to my soul. But my intellectual mind, because it's this false sense of wanting to feel like there's this need for safety, but sometimes it's like safety can come at the expense of spiritual fulfillment. There has to be some kind of discerning, because if I start to want to stay safe all the time, I'm gonna feel something empty inside. That's why for me, although I don't experience it, but that's why I feel gravitated towards things that feel uncomfortable. Like, why do I feel the things I'm scared of? Like, why do I feel like I'm moving towards that? You know, like the ice plunge. Like, I was like, oh, like my initial reaction, no, I don't want to do it. It's uncomfortable. But then the part of me is like, no, I need to do it. Like, there was this pull, this draw, because I knew that there was a need there. So involvement is crucial. Do something, even if it's something simple. That's why, for me, when I find myself in my head, or if I'm like on the computer doing all these things, this is one of the reasons why I personally go for walks, and why I find fulfillment in going to the gym, because I'm out of my head and into my body, and I'm being present here. Because that's where we'll find fulfillment. That's where we can discover the kingdom of heaven. That's where our happiness is expressed. Not about what's in the past or in the future. It's all in the beautiful now. And that's all that we will ever have. That's all that there is. The future nor the past don't exist. It's just the now. And that, my friend, is universal truth. In my opinion, that is universal truth. And so that small experience just reminded me of how the intellectual mind, the intellectual nature, can be such a huge hindrance to personal fulfillment, happiness, success, and having fun. Like, I can't tell you how many times when I've gotten into my own damn head, when I couldn't spend, mind you, and that takes a lot of energy to do that. When I could have spent less energy being involved in doing things, being present, I could have had so much fun. So much fun. And think about that for yourself. How much time do you feel like you're spending in your head when you could be using all that precious energy of yours to things that are fun, fulfilling, entertaining, whatever the case may be, that sense of just nourishment. And truly, the intellectual mind is just, that's why the mind makes a horrible master. The mind is not a master, it's just a tool. And it must work with the feeling nature, where our psychic, our intuition part is, our sense of wanting to belong, where our sense of how do we feel. Not like emotions, but think feeling like it's neutral. Like, it's almost like saying, like, I feel hot, cold, small, large, like things like that. But like, I feel fulfilled, I feel left out, I feel frustrated. Like, these are factual information, a barometer, a gauge into our own inner world, like what's going on. And this is why it's important to build awareness and know what's going on, because if not, many people just carry on like that with like their spiritual alarms going because they're going against their own standard of beingness. They're following their intellectual programming, and that's really what's like the obstacles here is the intellectual programming. Oh, buying to these excuses, when I get inspirations, and then those damn excuses wants to come in. Like, you have access to $1 million ideas to give you perspective. But how often, and trust me, I'm guilty of this, I'm like, nah, I can never work. Like, already before I even give it a chance to, like, where I got an inspiration that could be a potentially, like, $1 million idea, but I talk myself out of it. No, it can't happen because what? The excuses? Limitations? Okay. Well, let me tell you something. If you fight for your limitations, you keep them. If you fight for your limitations, congratulations, you keep them. That's your reality, and that's what you're going to attract. However, and this is why I think it's important to embrace limitlessness, unlimited, because then I'll attract that in my opportunities. And it boils down to a choice. Abundance, which is the reality, or lack, which is an illusion, based on fear, separation, possessiveness, you name it. All those nasty, icky things. So that's just wanted to give you some perspective, at least in this episode, on just like that plunging experiences. And this is why the work of just moving in balance, working with my intuitive nature, listening, following through, and being aware of the thoughts that come up. Like, okay, is this thought me or no? Because not all thoughts that you have belong to you. At least that's what I've learned in my experience. Discernment is key when it comes to navigating all this. It's important because not everything is you. And not everything is coming from your spirit guides. So the discernment is such an important tool. And I'll keep defaulting to this. If you want to learn some tools and things like that, things that I'm sharing that I personally work with, check out the show notes. Check out the resources I left there. Those are stepping stones to put you on, in my opinion, on a good path. So you can live more authentically. So you can get better at refining what you do. And that's something that I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about, like, why this program is so powerful, because it really helps you refine how you show up. It's not about replacing or making you believe or this is that. It's just helping you tap into your own energy, tap into your own self, using tools and techniques so that you master more of your energy and learn to navigate and move around other people's energy or energy in the environment. And not to mention, help you to organize yourself within so that you can work better with the law of attraction, so you can attract more of what you actually want and need in your life. So if that's something you desire, I invite you to check out the show notes, truly. And if you don't, well, I hope you find something that will work for you. It's not a one size fits all. I will admit, I will acknowledge. But I use it, I work with it, I still do it, I'm a believer in it. So that's why I share it and I talk about it. And so I'll leave it there, my friend. If you made it to this part of the episode, thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope you got something out of it. And that's it for this one. My name is Alvin Cepeda. This is your host, Alvin Cepeda, with the Spiritual Engineer Podcast, signing out. And as always, take care, my dear friend.